In today's video, I'm going to show you how to most efficiently put your sword away, or what's called a Noto. So when you bring it around, put it back to where you're not moving the saya very much. This video is actually part 2 in a series. If you want to watch part 1, I highly suggest you watch part 1 before you watch part 2 so you can gain the general basic principles before you watch this video. There are 4 individual skills that I'm going to cover in this video in detail. Once I cover these 4 principles, I'm going to go over some examples of how different styles use these principles, and also I'm going to go over the common mistakes people will make. So when I watch somebody doing Iaido or Iaijutsu, there's about 5 things I look at to see how skilled they are. And the more efficient somebody can put their sword back into the saya, generally the more skilled they are. So what I'm going to do is, my sole purpose in this video is to show you the most efficient way to put back the sword. And what do I mean by that is, if I start out with the sword in the same plane as the saya, or the scabbard, when I draw it back and then when I drop it in, then all of a sudden I don't have to move hardly at all to put the saya on. And that's more efficient than, say, if I start here, and this is not very efficient, so I start here and then I have to bring the sword all the way up, or I have to, as I get finished, I have to bring the saya all the way back. So here are the 4 things we're going to consider. Number 1 is, where do I touch the blade to the saya as I'm putting, where's the most efficient place to put the blade against the saya to put it away? So that's number 1. Number 2 is, how do I put my hand on the mouth of my saya? Do I put it in this position? Do I put it in this position? Do I put it in this position? What are the factors that determine what angle to hold my hand in relation to my saya? So the next principle is, what angle of the saya do I want to most efficiently put away my sword? Do I want it straight up and down? Do I want it a little angled, or do I want it a full angle to the side? Which one is going to get a more efficient Noto? So number 4 is, how do I efficiently use gravity? Because some styles do this type of Noto where they're actually spinning the sword. So how can I use gravity to most effectively maneuver and get this into position to where then I can make a very efficient Noto? Now, just for fun, I'm going to leave out one of the critical components for Iaido, because Iaido is a little bit different than the like a Katori Noto. So I'm going to leave a piece out, and whoever guesses the piece that I left out, put it in the description, and then I'm going to, as soon as they put it in the description, then I'm going to post the video of the missing piece. Okay, so the most critical factor that you need to consider putting the sword away is the relationship between the saya and the hand. And here's why. The mistake most people are going to make is, as they bring their sword along their hand, they're going to run it across this webbing, the skin of, the top of your hand. And so that hurts, especially the really sharp kasaki, or the end. It'll actually cut your hand going in there before it goes in. So to alleviate that, beginners start here and go, perfectly in line with the saya, and you'll pinch and you'll go along and you'll miss. So you'll actually miss that skin and then you'll go in, okay? And that's the way beginners do, and that's fine. And so as you're going along here, notice as I take the saya and I make it less of, or more of an angle in relation to my finger, in relation to more of an angle, then when I lay the blade on here, I can get it closer in alignment. Here I would have to have it here and then use a lot of movement to get it on. But if I put my hand at more of an angle, then when I'm pinching my blade, then I have to less of an angle, so then it just rocks in really efficiently. So that's a reason that you want to tilt your hand up a little bit. Okay, now I'm going to show the same thing except with the saya and my obi. So I'm going to put my hand on this. Now, if I'm going to put my sword away, so if I'm going to put my sword away and I'm going to first grab, if I grab perfectly straight in line, then as I bring it around and as I set it in here to really control it and pinch, then I've got to come all the way with this much saya, a lot of saya movement to put it away. So as I go out, I got to do a lot of saya movement to put it back into place. So now what I'm going to do is, as I'm going to bring my hand more of at an angle so that when I'm here, I barely have to move the saya to put it back in alignment. Okay, so here across, and then just a less movement because I moved the angle of my hand. Okay, so the next thing that I want to talk about, or probably the next most critical, is where do I place the mune, or the top of the blade, in relationship to my hand and my saya? Do I bring it all the way back here and then draw it out? Do I put it here? Where do I put it? Well, in general, as a beginner, you want to start closer to the suba, because when you first start, you don't have the coordination to feel where these two are in relationship or not. So I always suggest when you bring this around, set it here. The closer you can set it to the suba, more as a beginner, the better off you are. And then as you get more advanced, you'll go out. Now remember, I touched on using the weight of gravity to swing. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put these two together. So I'm going to use gravity in this way, and I'm going to, first you will use gravity. Now you don't want to bring your hand out and hit your hand. You want to bring this out, and then you want to touch here, and then put the sword away. But in this exercise, and it's just an exercise, I'm going to, as I let the weight drop, I'm going to push it out and slightly back. And the reason I'm doing this is I'm pushing it out slightly back, and then I'm drawing this forward as I'm pushing this back, so that I'm going to now put this in alignment. So I'm going to have it swing into alignment and then draw straight down. So this is like a nice relaxed, if you practice it a while, you're going to get this nice relaxed angle. And so it's natural. It's going to go out, and then they're going to meet together. See how I bring the two together? So as I come out, I'm going to exaggerate this, but I'm pushing this out, and then I'm pulling one against the other, and then they meet, and then it puts away. So it's just an exercise. But what it demonstrates the principle is, how do I get more sensitive to touching farther down the blade? And how you do that is you work one against the other, and then you pull in to position, and then you get more efficient, and you might do something like this. So here, and then it just looks like one movement. So one movement to put your sword back. Okay, so let me show you the progression of going from beginner to more advanced. So again, beginner, you might set it on your shoulder, come out to the middle, triangle, let this come off, and then that drops off into this position. When you get a little more advanced, so you're more advanced, you're going to bring this out, and then this is going to come out to meet it, and then it's going to come back and then drop in. Okay, and then when you get a little more advanced, you're going to leave this. You're not going to need to put this in and out so much. So you're going to bring this out maybe just a little bit, and then that feeds into that position. And then even more advanced, you're going to come here. You're not going to move hardly at all, and then you're going to bring those two together. So now what we're going to do is look at the factor of where I put my hand in relationship to my saya in the vertical or horizontal position. Now, probably the best for putting your sword away with the, not moving the saya at all is at about a 45-degree angle. And the reason we're going to do that is because if we bring this across the hand, so you're going to set it on the hand pretty much in line with that first finger, and you're going to draw this out until it drops in. Okay, so you want your hand at about a 45. Now some styles do straight up, some styles are straight across, and it's really up to each person as to how you want to do that. But for this exercise, I'm going to say at about a 45 degree is what you want to put your sword away to get most efficiency. Okay, now let's put all that together and show how we can put the sword away without moving this right hand hardly at all. So I'm going to just put the sword back without moving the right. So I'm not going to move the fingers a lot. I'm going to keep the fingers there, and I'm going to keep my saya there, and I'm going to put the sword back without moving anything hardly to put that away. Now, another principle you want to realize is as I spin, if I put some styles, including mine, you have a reverse grip, okay? So when I turn this around, when I bring this up and when I touch, it is hard to keep the sword against here because it's going to want to fall off. It's going to want to fall off, especially when you're a beginner. It's going to want to fall off. So one thing you can do is by loosening your grip and squeezing just a little bit here, it pushes it against my hand. So see, I can push it against my body. I can use that to give me a little more stability as I'm putting the sword away. So I'm squeezing, giving that, and you may need it, you may not need it, depending on your skill level, but that's something that you want to consider. Okay, again, the mistake is coming over here and bringing along my thumb instead of along this part of my hand. So that's a mistake, coming along here. And when I'm going along here, if I don't give a little bit of pressure, it could fall out, but it doesn't fall out if I'm putting a little bit of pressure. And then again, if I lift up too hard, I'm gonna come across that skin there. So I want to get this back and this barely in position so that when it comes across my hand, it barely goes across. So now let's go over all of that with all those tips as we're doing it real time. So when I'm in this position, I'm going to let the weight of the sword fall. Now if I let it fall and I'm on the ground, you're going to hit the ground. So I'm going to bring the hand up so the sword can go out, okay? And then at the same time, I'm going to bring this out and set this on here. And then I'm going to let it come across there, and then as it gets across, it's going to just feed right into the mouth, okay? So it's going to feed right into the mouth, and then it's going to finish. So now with this exercise, you should have all the components to put together to eventually practice enough to where you can put your sword away without any movement at all. So when you come across, just only barely moving to put your sword away. Now, in application, you won't necessarily use all of these principles and have a perfect, no movement in your saya. And here's what I mean by that. In one style, when you bring it up to your shoulder, because this is a vulnerable position in this, because I can't easily defend myself in this position. So I bring it out here, and I might switch, grab, and cut if I need to. So this is not going to be as efficient as I've shown in the video. So each style will have its own efficiency and its own technique that you will have to master. I hope these tips that I've gone over today help you in whatever style you're going to train in. And remember, every teacher does something differently, and every style does something differently. So just take these principles and adapt it to whatever style you're training out there. And hopefully after years of training, you can have a very efficient Noto.